Hey guys, what's going on? Mike Cooper here. Today I'm going to show you a brand new video on how to make your own 20-gallon long do-it-yourself sump. I'm making a sump for my already established 55-gallon saltwater reef tank. So first let's start off with the materials that you'll be needing. Obviously, if you're making a 20-gallon long sump, you're going to need a 20-gallon long aquarium. Now I purchased this Aquarium 20-gallon long aquarium from Petco. Generally they have dollar per gallon sales, so compared to buying it at $60-70, head over to your local Petco, pick it up for 20. Second thing you'll need is some aquarium safe silicone. Here I have some Aquarium aquarium sealant silicone, 10.3 ounce bottle. Use it with a caulking gun. I recommend Aquarium over any other type of aquarium safe silicone, since it's strictly a aquarium brand. To go with the bottle, of course, you're going to need a caulking gun and some tape. I got some blue painter's tape right over here to the side. Tape off where I'm going to have my baffles inside, that way I'll have some straight lines. As well, you're going to probably want a ruler. Ruler is going to help make straight lines, make sure everything's perfect. I have a 90-degree angled ruler as well to make sure that when I put my baffles in, they're going to be at a 90 degree. I got shims. Shims going to be used to hold my baffles in place, and a glass scraper. That way you can remove any excess silicone or any marks that you can make with a permanent marker, so that way when you put your baffles in, you know how to line them up. Now when it comes to the glass, I chose to use glass instead of acrylic for my baffles inside my tank, because one, glass is much cheaper than acrylic, and two, over time acrylic will bend in water. Glass holds much better with silicone compared to acrylic, especially in water, and it won't bend. So I chose glass because it seems it is the best route to go. So for the dimensions and pieces of glass that you're going to need, you're going to need two 5-inch by 8-inch 1/4-inch plate glass for your aquarium. Now when you get this glass cut, it doesn't have to be anything super fancy. All you need is that so the edges won't slice your fingers. So generally I told them I need 1/4-inch plate glass, polished edges, super cheap, perfect. You're also going to need a 7.5-inch by 11.5-inch piece of glass. You're going to need a 7-inch by 11.5-inch piece of glass. And you're going to need an 8-inch by 11.5-inch piece of glass. Now as well, I would recommend, if you have some, spare wood lying around at home, that you take two pieces of wood, and you're going to want to put the two pieces together, form a 90-degree angle, and I'll show you in the next part of the video why you're going to need these two pieces of wood. Alright guys, so the first part of the video that I'm going to show you today is how to silicone together the two 5 by 8-inch pieces of glass. So the first thing you're going to do is take your glass, and you're going to want to tape off both pieces of glass right where you're going to be siliconing it. By doing this, after you silicone, remove any excess, you're going to be able to peel the tape off and have a nice perfect line. Now as you can see, I have my piece of glass sitting on my two pieces of wood. I take my two pieces of wood, formed a 90-degree angle. That way when I put the two pieces together, they'll also form a perfect 90-degree angle. So I took my first piece and I taped it down to my wood. So now what you're going to want to do is take your aquarium safe silicone, put in your caulking gun, and you're going to want to apply a bead of silicone against the bottom piece here. So you're going to take your silicone and put it right along the back part of your glass. You're going to keep going, form a nice bead as such. Perfect. Put your silicone down, and now you're going to take your second piece of glass and you're going to place it right up on top of the silicone that you just have. Push it right up against the back of the wood, press it down, Perfect. Now you want to make sure that the sides of your glass line up perfectly. So I'm going to go adjust mine. Now remember, when you're working with silicone, you have a couple minutes to make some quick adjustments, move the glass before the silicone starts to solidify. So now that I got my second piece of glass on, I'm going to take my tape. I'm going to tape it down to make sure it stays in place. Take my tape, put it on my glass, in place. Glass is still lined up perfectly. Beautiful, beautiful. Alright, so now what you're going to want to do, take your finger and run it right along that seam. Smooth out the silicone, remove any excess as such. As you can see, I put a lot of silicone, so I made sure I moved it all. And now you're going to want to let this glass sit for at least an hour and a half before removing it from the wood. Alright guys, so now that we waited an hour and a half to let the silicone dry, the next step is going to be removing the tape and removing our glass panels from the wood. So first what I'm going to do is take my tape and I'm going to remove it off the top piece here. Then I'm going to take my other piece of tape and remove it off my glass there. So now we got just the glass sitting on the wood. Now there is a chance you will experience a problem such that the silicone, such as mine, attaches to the wood. Don't worry, don't panic, it's not a problem. All you have to do, just take your two pieces of wood. Like I said, I screwed my wood together. So you're going to remove the screws from the wood. And then by doing that, you're going to separate the two pieces of wood. And then you'll be able to remove the two pieces of glass from your wood. Alright guys, so the next step in plumbing our do-it-yourself sump is we are going to be putting in our first baffle. The first baffle is going to be our 8-inch by 11.5-inch baffle. Now this baffle is going to be the one that separates where the intake of water is and where the refugium is going to be. So this is going to be separating the two areas. So right now, if I take my ruler from the inside of the glass to where I have my baffle, I have it approximately 11.5 inches over from inside to the inside part of my baffle. So what I did was, I drew on my tank where I want my baffle to be lined up on the outside, took my shims, put my shims inside to hold my baffle in place, taped off my baffle, that way I'll be able to have a straight line with the silicone. And now I'm going to take my silicone and I'm going to apply it to the baffle. Now the purpose of using the shims is so that you'll be able to make one continuous silicone application all throughout. So here we go, I'm going to start on this side, silicone in the gun, here we go, and I'm going to apply it. Nice solid silicone. Beautiful. As you're siliconing, it doesn't hurt to hold the baffle in place just to make sure that you don't push it over. And remember, like I said last time, when you wait for the silicone to solidify, you do have a small time frame, little time window to move any of the glass in case it's not lined up properly. So I'm just adding a little bit of silicone here. So I got a thick gap between. Perfect. Now I'm going to come back over. Now I'm going to do this side. So again, take my silicone. Nice solid application. Continuous the whole way around. And back up. Perfect. Put your silicone down. Make sure your baffles are lined up like you want them. Take your finger, smooth out the silicone, remove any excess. like so. Beautiful. One more. By doing this, you're also pushing the silicone into the gap between your baffle and the tank, so that way you won't have any leaks. So I'm going to come over to here, get all that silicone out, and push it in. Beautiful. Now we're going to let this dry for at least an hour and a half before I remove those shims. And then after removing the shims, optionally what you can do is take your silicone again and shoot it into the gaps where the shims were, if you want to fill those gaps with silicone. Alright, so the next step in plumbing our do-it-yourself sump is we're going to silicone in now our two baffles that we silicone together to form that 90-degree angle. So right now, in the from the view that you guys can see, this is actually going to be the back side of my sump. So when you face it from the front, I'm going to have my two baffles that make the 90-degree angle where the water is going to intake into the sump in the back left corner of my sump. Now, since it is a do-it-yourself sump, completely customizable, you can put your baffles wherever you would like. So right now, I have my two baffles sitting inside my tank on top of a bunch of DVD cases. I have my baffles sitting 2.5 inches off the bottom of my aquarium. So what I'm going to do, I have my baffles inside, sitting 2.5 inches up. You want to make sure you don't have the cases pushed right up against the glass. Otherwise, when you silicone your glass to the aquarium, you can end up siliconing your DVD cases to the aquarium as well. So what you want to do, take your baffles, make sure it's pushed up nicely against the glass. Make sure you have that nice 90-degree angle formed, such as I do. Hold it there. Now I'm going to take the silicone. We're going to silicone the baffle on. I'm going to start off by applying my silicone to the outside. So here we go. Nice solid silicone right there. Come over to this side. Apply my silicone. All the way up. Perfect. Put it down. Take your hand, take your finger, push that silicone into the crevice, and remove all the excess. Same thing over on this side. Remove all that excess. Now what you could do is you could take your caulking gun, or recommended for this part, you could purchase a small tube of the Aquarium Safe Silicone for approximately $6. Make your life much easier. And you're going to take the silicone and you're going to apply it to the inside of your baffle. Alright, so now that we let our first baffle dry and we have now removed the shims, we're now going to silicone in our second baffle. This baffle is going to be the 7.5 inch by 11.5 inch baffle. This baffle is going to be the one that separates the end of the refugium from the beginning of the bubble trap. So as you can see, I placed my baffle in. I have my shims in place to hold it still. Now just so you know, according here to my ruler, the way I set it up, the gap from my first baffle for the refugium to my second baffle is approximately 11.25 inches. Now again, do it yourself, completely customizable. You could do it how you want or follow the way I did it, completely up to your preference. Alright, so here we are, baffle in place, silicone ready to go. So I'm going to start over on this side, hold my baffle in place just to make sure, and now I'm going to apply my silicone. Get a nice bead going. Get that silicone to connect both the baffle right to the glass of the aquarium. Nice and solid. Coming right back up. Perfect. Now if you see that your silicone is a little light and you could use some more, like mine, you could go, take your silicone gun, and again, apply a nice extra thick bead right up along. Now that looks a lot better. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now when I had my glass cut by a local glass cutter, they made my glass a little bit short, so I do have a bit of a gap between the tank and my glass baffles. But if you get the correct dimensions to the correct size, you're not going to have a problem at all with such a large gap. But if you do, just a little extra silicone and you'll be good to go. So here we are. Now we're going to go over to this side, right on the back. Nice solid bead right along the bottom and right back up. Beautiful. Take your finger, remove all that unwanted silicone. Move that unwanted silicone, push any of it into those crevices to fill that gap. Now usually what I say, allow for at least an hour and a half to let your silicone dry. However, according to the bottle, it does say it will dry in approximately 30 minutes. But my rule of thumb is, the more you add, the more you dry. And me preferably, I much rather wait a lot longer for it to dry. That way I know my silicone is completely solidified and my baffle's not going to move. Alright, so now you can see, removed all that excess silicone. Seals are looking good. Now I'm going to wait an hour and a half for it to dry, and then we'll place in our last baffle. Alright guys, so the last piece of our do-it-yourself sump that we're going to be siliconing in today is our last glass baffle. And this is the 7-inch by 11.5-inch baffle. Now as you can see, I have it in place. I have it supported up with the shims underneath. I have 3 DVD cases suspending it from the bottom of the aquarium, giving me about approximately an 1.5 inch gap between the bottom of the aquarium and the bottom of my glass baffle. I have also, between our last baffle that we siliconed into this one, it's approximately an 1 inch gap between the two to allow the water to flow over, but also trap those bubbles and then empty out into our return section here. Alright, so here we go. Silicone in place in my gun. Make sure that I recommend possibly holding this last baffle in place with your hand. It might move. Especially sitting on top of a DVD case, it might slide, or with the shim, it might move a little bit. So I would recommend just putting your hand on, holding it in place. Now since we do have a very tight gap between the two baffles now, it's very important to make sure you get that solid seal right on the back side here. If you have one of the small silicone tubes, you could take that, and if your hands are small enough, you could stick it inside and apply the silicone on the inside. But as long as you form that nice solid seal with the silicone from the back side, you should have no problems at all. And I'm certain that you'll see that later on in the video when we do the water test. Alright, so here we go, silicone in my caulking gun, holding it in place. And now I'm going to just apply my silicone. Now as you can see, like I said, baffle might tend to move a little bit, so it is important to hold it in place, such as so. Make sure everything's still all lined up. Definitely the smaller tube of silicone would most certainly come in handy for this part. As you can see, it is a bit of a tight fit with the large caulking gun, but it's all based on preference. Here we go, applying that silicone. Beautiful. It came out a little messy, I'm not gonna lie. I am gonna fix my baffle slightly. Get it back to where I need it to be. Again, it will slide. It's most likely going to slide, so you want to make sure that you have it in place. You do have a couple minutes before the silicone starts to solidify to get everything right back in the right spot. So push it over, perfect. Take your finger, push it nice and tight right up against the glass. Get that silicone, go right inside that gap. Beautiful, beautiful. Same thing over here. Remove that extra silicone while also pushing it into the gap between the two pieces of glass, the aquarium and the baffle here. Perfect. So now we got that seal. Nice, perfect seal. We're going to let it dry for an hour and a half. Once you let it dry, you can remove the shims from the baffle and the gap between the baffle and the tank from where the shims were. You can fill that in again with silicone and have it nice and sealed. Alright guys, so now that our silicone has completely dried, I have removed the tape from inside the tank. Everything came out fine. So now optionally I chose to spray paint my sump. So as you can see, here it is, the finished product, now drying off. Spray painted all the way around. I got the sides and the back pure black. Looks fantastic, I would say. Now you want to make sure you tape off the edges, the black edges of your aquarium. Make sure you don't get any spray paint on there. And that includes both the top side and the bottom side of the tank. As well, make sure you cover up the top. Get any spray paint inside the aquarium, then that spray paint is going to leak into your water, and then you're going to end up having a problem with chemicals now in your aquarium water. And as well on the front side, since you're not doing the front side, you want to make sure you have that nice and covered off. So again, as you can see, here I have my 20-gallon long sump, completely spray painted. Also did my 10-gallon sump spray painted. Make sure you check out that video. Go to my channel, do it yourself, 10-gallon sump. Now I'm just going to wait, approximately 24 hours before I take all the tape off and everything. And then for the final test, do a water test, make sure all my seals hold, and then our do-it-yourself sump will be completed. Alright guys, now that we have allowed all our silicone to dry, we have spray painted our sump and the spray paint is now dried. Our last test is to make sure our seals are perfect, doesn't leak any water, and the baffles stay in place. So since it's a little cold where I'm from, I got buckets of water instead of a hose. So here I go, I got my bucket of water. I'm going to take it and I'm going to slowly pour it into the first area over here. This is going to be where the water is coming in through your tube sock. You can throw your protein skimmer in here, your heater. So here we go, take my water. I'm going to start to pour it in. So far looking so good. Stop for a second, make sure. No water on the other side. Great sign, absolutely great. Here we go, more water coming in. As you can see, as this section starts to fill up, we got no water on the other side. Alright, so the water's coming out. About to go over to the other side now. Perfect. Doing exactly what you want. I'm going to take my other bucket now. Like I said, where I'm from, a little cold. So I can't use a hose right now at the moment, so I'm just using buckets of water. So I'm going to take my water, pour it into the same section here. As you see, water spills over into the refugium area. Last test, just going to watch the bubble trap capture all the bubbles right there. And that right there is a successful water test. As you can see, if you come in close, you're going to see that from where the water comes in to your refugium, got a slight drop off since I have this baffle at 8 inches, this one at 7.5. You could choose to go lower. I chose to go at 7.5. I found that was the most ideal. And then over here, water comes right over into the bubble trap, into your return area. And that, guys, completes our water test. Alright everybody, so here we are. Here's our final product. Got our sump up and running. So the last part that I mentioned was getting a piece of acrylic, cutting a hole in the top for your tube sock, your filter sock. So I got a piece of acrylic, cut it to 5 inches by 5 inches. I got a special drill bit that allowed me to adjust the hole to whatever size I needed. So I made it a 4-inch diameter hole, silicone on the top. So as you can see, here we have our filter sock sitting in the acrylic. You're going to use the silicone that I used on this whole aquarium to silicone it into place. I used a 4-inch hole filter sock that is approximately 8 inches long. It's all based on preference, how long you want it to be. But yeah, here is our final product. As you can see, we got our sump up and running. Got my water coming through my PVC in the back. I got my filter down here. I got my protein skimmer. Need to get a new one. This is the one I was running already. Refugium right here. You can see the water level dips down a slight bit from the first section. I'm running some sand right now. I'm gonna get some Cheeto and some live rock so I could grow some copepods and whatnot. Water comes through the bubble trap, and then right there, bam, is your return pump, and right back up. And that'll complete our video. Feel free to comment with any questions or concerns. Make sure you follow my page, my channel. Check out any other videos I have. Hopefully more soon to come. And thanks for checking out my video, guys.